to this by starting off with some background on the Red Pill movement. It began in online forums around the year 2016 or so, maybe sooner, revolving around an analogy made to the movie The Matrix. At the time, it was a discussion that was about realizing, breaking through, and realizing what the realities of life is as far as who really runs things and like that we're all a part of the rat race and what that really means. And even Google, when you look up the definition of red pill, it says used to refer to. Hi, Martin. I'm doing well. How are you? It used to refer to because it used to be that matrix analogy. It has warped itself into what is now a movement that dehumanizes women and encourages misogyny amongst especially young men. And yeah, the Google definition says used to refer to. And I made some videos about third wave feminism when I started making YouTube content around 2017. So I remember back then people complaining about how women would yell at them for holding the door open for them. And that turned into men saying women take no accountability for absolutely anything. And this has now turned into what we have now, which is a lot of people making content, which people do idolize. They just absorb it, no questions asked. It's on repeat. It's very much brainwashing, offering no solutions. And it does seem to be losing steam, and rightfully so, because so many people get banned and demonetized making this content that is so harmful. Now, I'm all about free speech, but we do draw the line somewhere, and that is when you are inciting violence. A lot of people don't talk about this, but Pearl Davis, just Pearly Things, she got 1 million subscribers in like a year or two making content around this red pill rhetoric. And a person who ended up doing something bad with a GUN put her in their manifesto. They were watching her content. This just, it fuels violence. It incites the worst parts of men. And it also makes them a lot of money, these people doing this content. She She's on her way out, thankfully. Overall, their rhetoric is unproductive at best, with no solutions, and they are starting to become the type of person, I say person, although it's always women, they're saying takes no accountability for anything. Like it was literally never any of these guys' fault that anything happened in their life. And that is counterproductive to personal growth and what I believe more men need more of these days. People in general, but especially the men that are consuming this kind of content, need stoic philosophy in their lives, and they're not getting that from this content. They dehumanize women, and it's one thing for a man to be short-sighted when it comes to relationship issues like this, like when they try to use evolutionary psychology to their advantage and everything. And I don't mean that in a dig, like men are inherently dumber than women. I don't mean that. I mean that men are socialized to be less emotionally intelligent than women, and it is not their fault. And it is up to them to, it's harder, I believe, for a man to work on himself in certain ways because he wasn't socialized to do that, and he was socialized the opposite of that. Like it's not okay to process your emotions if that means that you're going to cry and everything. Hi, Mark. I hope you heard me, Martin. I said, "How are you?" So, excuse me. It's one thing for a man to be short-sighted about relationship issues. You you can't fault them. But, I mean, when they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s making the same mistakes and encouraging other men to make the same mistakes, you can, though. And in some ways, men have more barriers to overcome when it comes to working on themselves mentally. So I can't stress that enough. I'm not trying to make this into women are better than men, but it's coming from a place that is countering the whole like women are not as good as men. I am doing well, Martin. I'm having a pretty good day today. The weather is so great here, and that's been really nice. So there's a lot of, I've just uploaded a shorts. There's a lot of statistics floating around that they never really delve into. They'll say certain things like they like to harp on the fact that women file for 80% of divorce, but somebody put it like this, and I love this. If 80% of a company's workforce left. Would you blame the people that left, or would you look at the company and be like, "What are you doing? Why can't you retain any employees?" You know? Um, Excuse me. I need to start like marking my notes off. I made a shorts about this statistic that has been misconstrued by multiple channels for years now, literal years. If you look it up, 6.5 out of 1,000 people, if you just look that up on YouTube, all these videos come up for multiple channels. This one channel made like 4 videos of it, and they got almost 1 million views out of all of them. And they say 6.5 out of 1,000 men are getting married. And they keep misconstruing that statistic. It's 6.5 people out of 1,000 people. And statistics are kind of tricky. You need to like really think hard. This isn't saying that like less people are getting married. Overall, it is trending downwards. Marital rates fluctuate during the decades, but um, I don't, oh, a highlighter. Yes, you're right, SK. That would be a good idea. That would probably be better than scribbling even more on my already messy handwriting. Um, I'm sorry. Now I am okay. They misconstrue their statistics. When it comes to this, it's 6.5 out of 1,000 people, and it is slightly trending downwards, and like consistently downwards and not going back up. If you look at the statistics, it goes up and down over the last 100 years. But since 1999 ish, it is still kind of going down. And in my opinion, my theory is this is when the real fracturing, it always was. Part of what is going on right now is the internet coming into our homes, mostly adult media being accessible. And I also think that social media plays into that, the ability to communicate and, cheat more easily and everything kind of plays into that. But I think it mostly has to do with the way brains are literally being rewired. And um, so that just bothers me. I looked up and it's like still happening on a regular basis, saying, "Oh, look, 6.5 men out of 1,000 men. That's like nothing." No, it's people out of 1,000 people. And I know it's hard for them to see that because they literally don't see women as people. They see us as less than. And I really do think that plays into part of why they can't wrap their head around that statistic. And none of them check their facts. They just all keep repeating, "Oh, this channel got a lot of views, so I'm going to say it." And that brings me to my next point. They have like 5 talking points that they all say over and over. And I want to talk about that real quick. This is my summation. 1, women are born with worth, while men are just worth what they can provide. 2, women were good wives and are now not, as we are modern. They say that a lot, modern women. 3, men have created and built all of modern society. Women have not and are much less intellectually as well as physically capable as men. Therefore, we deserve less human rights. 4, women lose ability to pair bond the more intimate partners they have. However, men are not affected in the same way. They, in fact, deserve numerous partners and they should be able to cheat if they are providing. 5, um, I'm sorry. Yeah, women hit the wall around the age of 35. We hit the wall. And what I have to say back to those points, and okay, it's just the same thing over and over. This isn't philosophy. This isn't psychology. This isn't any sociology that's going to help anybody. It's literally brainwashing people. I need to stop saying literally. I know I sound like a valley girl or something. I say that so much. It's brainwashing people, repeating the same talking points over and over with no real, I mean, they can't even fact check the statistics that they barely use. They don't give real insight. It's just this spinning the wheels on the fact that these men that are going through it, you're just going to know that you're playing on their heartstrings and tell them what they want to hear. And then therefore they never do the self-improvement that might help them. And to the first point that our women are born with worth, men are worth what they provide. Women's natural beauty is inherently worth something. It's validating for those around her. It's true. A beautiful woman is a man's greatest accessory. However, you can't, that also includes character. If she is, you know, not a nice person, she's not going to be that validating. But you can't walk through life. You're not going to be carried through life with your pretty privilege. You can't live off of that as a woman. And most women don't, even if they have it. And it's like fleeting, right? Like the hit the wall. We all. And if men understood the masculine and feminine divine and respected that and took their place and had more pride in it instead of getting mad at women for objectifying themselves as a result of being so overly objectified by the male population for so long, the world would be a lot better. And number 2, when you say women were good wives and now modern women are not good wives, they they're talking about this era in the 1950s when it was mostly in advertisements. This stay-at-home mom was depicted as the ultimate American mom. Most women for most of time work. Most of us have had to work to survive for most of time. We were out there hunting and gathering, and then we were out there in the fields helping. Women have like not really stayed at home and just been completely domesticated in that sense, where they do nothing but what is inside the home with exception for like a few decades where our prosperity in America was so great after like World War II that people could live off of one income and they could have a car or two, they could have a house or two, and they'd be more than fine. It's not like that anymore. It hasn't been like that for a long, long time. And to fault women for working is so ridiculous. We just can't win. We cannot win with these people. We can't win with anybody really, but these red pill people are like magnifying that you can't win if you work. If you're a working woman, then you're a boss babe. If you don't work, then you're a gold digger. And number 3, that saying that men have created and built all of society. Yes, men are responsible for so much and they should be respected for what they have done. However, to completely dismiss the fact that more women have risked their lives to birth the future, and while being kept out of institutions, still made advancements. There are women that weren't allowed in the same libraries and universities as their husbands, and they succeeded in their field more so, even being kept out. And now that we have more rights, we are catching up at such a quick rate. Um, Number 4, women lose ability to pair bond. So the few studies that contain both men and women in this regard, asking people how many partners they've had and seeing how happy their marriage was, like how do you put that into a statistic? How you're just going by what these people are saying, yes, I'm happy, or no, I'm not happy. And how long lasting the marriage is. And interestingly, most of the time they were just asking women about their number of intimate partners. There is a few big studies where they also ventured out and actually asked the men too. And the numbers are interesting. It's not what the red pill people say at all. At all. It actually says like the ideal, I need to make a shorts on this. The ideal amount is like like around 2 partners. Like it's actually better if you haven't both only been with each other statistically according to these statistics. I'm not saying I believe this, but it of course like the more partners, it is true, the more likely you are to not be happy in your marriage and get divorced. But the same is true for men. It's absolutely true for men when they actually decided to start testing and asking the same questions of men. And the hit the wall thing is so juvenile. We all age, and it's a privilege to do so. Stoicism is at its core just remembering like we're all going to die one day, and life is to be lived like in honor of those that didn't get the next day. And if you really had a stoic mind and a stoic heart, the last thing you would do is like say, she hit the wall, about a woman. And especially when like women are so beautiful. We can be so beautiful at every age, and beauty is part of what carries us through this earthly life and helps make it worth it. Not that men cannot be beautiful. I think men can absolutely be beautiful. But I want to talk about this one point. I wouldn't call this one of the points. Well, maybe it is a point they bring up over and over, but not the female red pillars that I'm getting ready to talk about. Mostly the males say that we live in a gynocentric society. Don't get me started. We do not live in a gynocentric society. When I was a young breastfeeding mom, there were these movements to let moms breastfeed in public and like just be normal and not be gawked at or treated like we're doing something bad. Meanwhile, every other movie you see has topless women in it, multiple topless women around the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And then all of a sudden, we have to have these nurse ins to prove a point. I didn't participate in that. I always, like, covered up a little bit with a little shawl or something and never had a problem personally, except for actually, my mother-in-law asked me to leave the room. I nursed in restaurants and public places and front of family, never had any issues like this, but I do totally see our over-sexualized society and the need for it and why it was a thing. Hi, Diana. How are you doing tonight? Um, Women are definitely more tuned into their emotions. I feel like men can be just as emotional, and it does depend on the person, and part of our what we work on in general as women, I'm saying women in general, not all women, is being able working on our emotions, not reacting to them. And I think men have to work to tap more into theirs and to not maybe react to um their desires in that urgent in that intimacy kind of way. A lot of men, that's when they grow up. I am doing really well, Diana. I like how that's how you say that name, right, Diana? I like how you spell that. So it's not a gynocentric society. When we had to convince people to let it be okay for women to nurse their babies, it's not a gynocentric society when what we go through once a month, most women, a menstrual cycle is like this taboo subject. It's still weird, it's still impolite and something that so many people, and I know not all men, because my husband is not like this and he was never like this. So I know there's good men out there. And if you're watching this, you probably are a good man, right? But like the men that get grossed out, I've heard the saddest stories like on Reddit. There's stories where men like made their daughters go throw their waste out like in a separate trash can because they couldn't stand seeing like a used pad in the trash can. And how do you think it feels going through it once a month? If men bled for a week, upwards of a week every month, could you imagine? Our whole world would revolve around the fact that men bleed upwards of a week of every month. Seriously, think about it. It really would. If they bled every single month like we do, things would be totally different. They would have so much catering to them. We probably have like, so that gynocentric society, it's an over objectification of women in a sexual way, and that has caused you to see everything in that lens. And you think that the fact that we're over objectified means that it's a gynocentric society when it's actually kind of the opposite. We've dehumanized women to a point where there's all of this going on. Femicide, if femicide was really taken seriously as a hate crime, it would be spoken about how it does seem to be on the rise all around the world. Like, there's a problem. The pregnant women in the US are more likely to pass away at the hands of the man that got them pregnant than any pregnancy complication. They're more likely to DIE from homicide than a pregnancy complication. That's a fact. There's something really wrong with that, and that's what we should be talking about. Like, how can we prevent men from offing their pregnant women and babies? Because they pass away more from that than pregnancy complications. It's seriously a fact. And when you Google it, it can be a little tricky because I said that in one video and somebody's like, that's not true. And I Googled it in a few different ways. And I'm like, I could see why somebody might look that up and not find the statistics because they word it tricky and differently. So when women start using the red pill talking points, it's unexcusable, though, in my opinion. This is when it gets taken up a notch. You can't blame the fact that they weren't socialized to be emotional. They are taking these same talking points, monetizing it, and they tend to gain popularity. They shoot to the top. They'll say the same thing all these other men have been saying for like a decade and never break through, but then they get to a million subscribers in a year saying the exact same stuff. Why? Because women validate men. Men need the validation of women. I think now it seems like, I don't want to say now more than ever. I think we've always needed each other. But as women become more independent and the marriage rates go down and everything, it seems to be, from my viewpoint, that men are suffering more. And that goes hand in hand with the fact that when people lose a spouse, when a man loses his wife, he tends to get married. And then when a wife loses her husband, she's less likely to get married. Men need the care of women so very badly. So these women like Pearl Davis, they can work hard. They can work around the clock and never be called a boss babe. And this is because they have no real principles in the red pill community. They don't really have any ground they really stand on. There's there's nothing they're really fighting for. They just look up to these idols that they're worshiping and all their talking points they absorb, and that's it. And that's what they believe, and that's what they go say. Never goes beyond that. It's very shallow. Um, excuse me. The objectification of women on the Red Pill podcast is next level. They'll use scantily clad women like as guests, but also in the thumbnails, and at the same time complaining about women monetizing as they monetize it. You you created society, you created all of this, right? There is one woman that does not do the objectification thing, and she's interesting to me. And I'll admit I'm a huge hate watcher, but I haven't watched all of her content, just watched a lot of it, especially in the beginning. And she's called the Happy Wife School here on YouTube. She gained popularity pretty quick, like getting 600,000 subs in a matter of like 6 to 8 months. Hey, Algie, how are you doing tonight? She says that women, your happiness is all dependent on you. You have to work on yourself and be happy like from within. You can't depend on anybody else for your happiness. And I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. The thing is, I also think that it's true for men. You have to be a happy, whole person before you enter a relationship, ideally. And you can't expect your partner to be the one to make you happy. But this happy wife lady, she will say, women, your happiness depends on you. But men, everything wrong in your life is because your wife emasculates you. Literally everything. Everything is the wife's fault. And I'm not exaggerating. Watch this woman's content. Literally everything that ever happened that's ever been wrong is the woman's fault. And it's all, say, we have womanly ways. It's extremely dumbed down. She says that there's camp victim and camp take responsibility, and women need to go to camp take responsibility. And there is some truth. There's pearls of truth in here. And why did I call it pearls? I don't know why I called it that. Strings of truth, stringy strings. And that's what makes this red pill rhetoric so insidious sometimes, is there is some truth to some of it. And I know there are some women out there like Karen. That's her name. Her name is Karen. It just happens to be so. And she's talking about herself. She's describing herself, generalizing it as if it is absolutely all women. The same that a lot of these men tend to do. Like, I know not all men want to sleep around their whole life. Some men actually do want to lay roots down and have a family and not be out there doing the same thing they did in their college days into their 60s. So this woman, the Happy Wife on, I'm sorry, the Happy Wife School here on YouTube, she says, I already said the happiness thing. She calls herself the happiness expert, the world's happiness expert. Who does that? Who would do that? Anybody that slaps their name, their personal name on a protocol, like I've seen this with like health things. Anybody who claims to be the world's expert in absolutely anything, like run away. Like there's no way you can take anybody seriously. And she's just stroking male egos as she offers no real solutions, just seriously saying women don't take accountability and they're at fault for all the ills in the world. She has a male mentor. It's just kind of interesting to me. She brings up this male mentor a lot, and I don't know. I think it's weird unless you're in a specific profession. If it has to do with your profession, if she's like an architect and her male mentor was her male mentor, that would be one thing. But it's strange to me that a female has a male mentor, and she has said these things that it made me like, wow, I can't believe. So over 100,000 people are following her for her advice on marriage. And she says things like when her husband got his hours cut at work, she had to go in her closet and cool off because she was so mad. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, this is what marriage is all about. Like, you go through stuff together. And she was working 2 jobs at that time. Like, what's the problem? She she got mad, or she had to quell herself from getting mad when he was starting to get loud at a concert. They went to one of their favorite bands, a concert. And as she like was like, "Oh, like I'm not going to tell him. I'm going to let him have fun." She saw another woman like tell her boyfriend to stop being so loud at a concert, and like, yeah, this she is telling men the kind of women to stay away from. Like, She said herself she was diagnosed with like a personality disorder, I think. I don't remember for sure, and I'm not diagnosing her with anything, but I do not think it is normal. She said she learned her husband's weaknesses and preyed on them on purpose. I'm getting the chills right now. I wish my camera was good enough to show you my goosebumps. Every time I think about that, it seriously creeps me out. No, men, not all women are going to learn your weaknesses and exploit them. She said that. And because she is so validating for so many men, she can say the same few talking points over and over. Of course, her videos that talk about sex get like 10 times more views. And once again, it's the same thing. She literally held like a plug up and said that intimacy is as simple as this and plugged it in, pulled it out. When she's a woman and she knows better than that, she knows so much better than that. And it is like, there, I believe there's some kind of retribution for that, like karma, whatever. Like she's gonna pay for that. Like that's not like a veiled threat. It's out there in the universe. She's a woman and she's saying these things about women to hundreds of thousands of men, making men feel justified in their anger. Like, I do think that dead bedrooms are a problem, but in my opinion, this is my theory. Women are absolutely exhausted. And when you are exhausted as a woman, you lose that drive sometimes. And you need to work through that if you want to have a good physical relationship with your partner. And it's that simple. It is so hard as a woman to get that when you like you have so much going on, whether you have kids or not, if you're working a full-time job, and I think it might be nature's way of stopping us from procreating when we are stressed out. And now, in this unnatural environment we have in this world, like we are all more stressed out than ever. And it's not an excuse for a woman to, you know, it just makes me sad that there's so many. Hey, boss man, thank you. It just makes me sad that there's so many people going through that when I do think that is one of the gifts from God that we have as men and women in relationships together. Like that physical aspect should be shared and enjoyed. And if it's not, you need to find out why and work through that. I've had some medical issues. I've had biopsies. I've had several biopsies. So like it's gonna wane and ebb and flow. And for a woman to say it's just as easy as sticking something in a socket and telling men that are already in a bad place these things, it's so detrimental. It's really sad. She says that she gets bonus points from the liquor store, and I drink wine sometimes, but if you're to the point where you're getting bonus points from the liquor store, I don't think you can call yourself the world's happiness expert. I'm sorry, like, how does that equate? If you are really the world's happiness expert, you don't need to consume enough, I'm sorry, as much alcohol as it would take to get the bonus points from the liquor store. And it's just freely giving this information, just like so many of these idols that people worship here on YouTube, because they cannot fail, because they know no matter what they say, people are going to eat it up. And I do think, I'm not saying this facetiously, facetious, gosh, I can't say that. People need a relationship with God. They need something above the idolizing of people. And because less people have a relationship with God, more of them are clinging to these ideologies and falsities that are going to not serve them at all in any way, shape, or form. This rhetoric that these people are spreading, in my opinion, are only gonna it's only gonna harm men and cause more of them to be lonely. I do not think that all people have to be married. If you consider yourself MGTOW, I'm like completely fine with that, because I think if a man has gotten to that point, most of the time it's been experiences. And it like who am I to say that he didn't have a lot of bad experiences with women? And that is horrible. Like, I know there's some crappy people out there, but there's good women and bad women. There's good men and bad men. You can say the same thing about absolutely any group of people you're going to start dissecting. And these people that do these same talking points, okay, I have to say this about Karen too. She doesn't have children, which is absolutely fine. I would never fault anybody for not having children. I think it's great if you decide. I think anybody that controls their fertility is, a good thing, whatever way that is. So just because I have children doesn't mean I think everybody should. But for a woman to call herself like some marital expert and happiness expert, and I called this out. I actually had a smaller YouTube channel. I privated all the videos on that was just like red pill, and it is like so negative because they're all so negative. And like it was like, I'm assuming she doesn't have kids, which is perfectly fine. But how can you touch upon, women when they're saying they're exhausted at the end of the day and then tell men, "Yeah, it's just like a socket," when you yourself don't know what it's like to be a caretaker of an entire family, which once again, it's fine. I don't mean to demean any woman that's not. I really any woman that, like, wants to be and isn't, like, she is going against girl code in every single way by saying it's a socket, and she could be helping men understand, yes, women are more emotionally connected in that certain way, the pair bonding thing everybody wants to talk about, but it's things that we can all overcome together whenever you work through every it's like it's gonna happen. And you have to take it as it comes. You can't watch a YouTube video, be like, "Okay, I got it. Now I have the guide in my head for the rest of my life. This is gonna be." And that's why anybody that says they're a marital expert is a joke, 'cause it's so many situations, multifaceted people. You just have to know these are the principles my character stands firmly on, and this is what happens when that happens, like, before it even happens. But that's not to say because all these people on the internet said all women are like this, I'm not gonna date for the rest of my life. And like that's what a lot of this is turning into. You see comments on her channel from people where their marriages are breaking up, and I would just wonder how many marriages is she responsible for breaking up. But then again, if they're on their way out already, like she's probably just like the last thing to push the dominoes over, she's not the only factor. But it's very interesting, and I'm gonna say this, in my opinion, allegedly, I think she gets sloshed before every live. I think that those bonus points, she's racking those up, and, like, she might be a little buzz on before she goes live every Saturday, and the way she acts, and she has this male mentor that seemed like maybe allegedly he's calling the shots, and I think he saw somebody like Pearl, and he's like, "We're gonna do what Pearl did, only we're not gonna go so extreme. We're not gonna show 15-year-old girls talking about adult topics and refuse to private the videos. We're not gonna be absolutely hateful. We're just gonna low key say absolutely everything wrong in a marriage is the woman's fault." And I guess what the point of this is, it's just another example of people idolizing people online and the faults that can come with that. And if you ever do see a red pill video that you like, it probably is because it's harkening back to that old analogy from the Matrix movie. It has more to do with waking up to like we're serfs, we're like indentured servants, and we have to pay to live. We go, work most of our waking hours, and we have to give all that pay to other corporations and work for the corporation, give their pay back to them just to survive. And we do need each other now more than ever. Partnerships, living together, like multi-generational households should need to make a comeback. They probably already are because the cost of living is so expensive. So at this time, we need to really be less divisive and work together. And the family unit is so strong. And I think that's why they're trying to break it apart. And once again, I don't think everybody should be married, but the nuclear family being a strong unit is the foundational building blocks of what makes America so great. And my husband said, "Thank you for raising such a great kid. I know it was you." And I was like, "Yeah, but it was you that went to work and provided for us so I could stay at home and focus on our kids." And it takes two. And it's like forcing people into two different gender roles and being so like a woman does this and a man does this. That's not conducive to a good marriage. It's a partnership. Like sometimes you do this, sometimes I do this, and we step in with each other's roles. Of course, there might be chores that, like, yeah, he always mows the lawn, like stereotypical stuff. However, if something happened, he had like a surgery, I could step in and mow the lawn, right? And like, is another thing that really bothers me about the red pill. They're suffering. A lot of men are suffering, so they want to try to go back to a time during 1950s advertisements where women were practically slaves for them, and like it was advertisements, okay? And I appreciate everybody tuning in. This has been a half an hour, and I've gone through everything I had written in my script. This is something that I do want to make I have some edited videos with like some clips that show some more examples of how ridiculous Karen is from the Happy Wife School, and it's also really sad. There's some wild comments sometimes, like, and I wanna feel better, but oh my gosh, that sounds so mean. Sometimes when I need to pick me up, I go through a comment section, but I get sad when I see the people talking about marriages breaking up. But I'll give you an example about a comment that, like, I just think about. So funny. This man said, "Why can't my wife treat she doesn't treat me as good as she treats the child or the dog." And now I'm not doing it justice. It's like men want the care of a woman so badly that they're completely lost without it. When a woman doesn't get it, she just goes and does for herself. But then we're told that we we are less than, we shouldn't be able to vote by these people. I know not all men think that. And the good men, they would fight for their daughter's right to vote. They there's child support because so many men didn't pay child support. So many men walked out on entire families for so many generations that lawmakers were like tired of seeing men walk out on their daughters, leaving them destitute because they had no way to earn money. That was why child support became a thing. And family court has been skewed to women's favor, and there's a reason for that. Is it always fair? No. And that's why I said the 50-50 custody thing is something I like. And if these red pill slash men's right movement activists really cared, they would try to lobby for more change in states like automatic 50-50 custody, because it's like in 11 states now. Why isn't it in all of them? But instead, they get on the screen and say the same thing over and over and make money off of doing that. There's men's rights activists, that's kind of another genre, but they also a red pill. There's one called Roma Army, and she's been doing this for years, saying that she's the largest men's rights community and she's going to build a shelter for men because there's no domestic violence. Like, there's no shelters for men like that. But she never does, she never will. We all know she's just going to keep like making the money while she can, which she has a family. I'm glad she's making good money, but it's harmful when you are playing upon the heartstrings of people that are already hurting. And I hope that a lot of the men that are stuck in that bad place find something to get at them. Like, I don't think it's going to be me, but like stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, that would really help so many people that are spinning their wheels on this rhetoric, in my opinion. And as I mentioned earlier, that means you keep into a perspective that this life is fleeting. We are all going to pass away one day. Most of us have lost friends at this point, and you know what it's like to lose somebody at a young age. Like, that tragedy never goes away. And if it's solemn, but it's true. If you carry a part of that with you and you treat people better, everybody from the cashier at the store to, the people you say goodnight to right before you go to sleep at night in your home, and that should be the goal for all of us, right? To just improve and get better, not to be told, oh, yeah, everything is their fault. That's so unproductive. So I'm going to sign off of here now, and any comments are appreciated. I try to answer all my comments. And if you have any input on this or any questions or any suggestions for any content, I'd really, really appreciate it. I love hearing from you guys. Have a good night.